A cool autumn morning moved through Portland, Maine, bringing the clear smell of dry leaves spread across the old cobblestone streets. Sarah Mitchell, an experienced antique appraiser with more than 15 years finding hidden treasures, walked into the grand Victorian mansion on historic Elm Street. The Whitmore estate sale had pulled collectors from all over New England, each hoping to find something special among the family's 100-year-old belongings. Sarah's sharp eye, trained by many hours studying objects from past times, was quickly pulled to a small group of photographs placed on a fancy mahogany table with detailed hand-carved designs. Among the brownish portraits and old pictures of family events, one special photograph seemed to speak to her, almost demanding her notice. What she saw was a formal studio picture dated 1914, showing an elegant black family of 4. The father stood tall and proud, dressed in a well-made dark suit that showed real wealth and good position, a rare thing for an African-American family in the Jim Crow time. His wife sat nicely in front of him, wearing a beautiful white blouse, with her hair done in the popular Gibson girl style of that time. 2 children finished the picture, a young boy who looked about 8 years old, and a little girl no older than 5. Both in their best clothes. The photograph had the raised seal of Hartwell Studios in Boston, one of the city's top and most exclusive photography shops. What made this even more special was that Hartwell Studios mainly worked with rich white customers, meaning this black family had reached an amazing level of importance and respect in early 20th century Boston society. If you like hidden historical mysteries and finds that change what we knew about the past, hit that like button now and subscribe to this channel. Tap the notification bell too, because what you will learn in the next few minutes will really surprise you. Sarah picked up the silver frame from the table, bringing the picture closer to study every part with great care. The setup followed the usual rules of portrait photography from that time. The father stood behind his seated wife, with the children placed properly next to their parents. Every part looked carefully planned, just as was normal for photo records of that period. Yet something about the mother's pose seemed very strange to Sarah, almost worrying, in a way she could not quickly explain. While the rest of the family looked straight at the camera, keeping the calm and serious faces usual in formal pictures of that time, the woman's left hand showed an odd position, her fingers bent inward in an unnatural manner, as if she was purposely hiding something from sight. "Quite an interesting item you found there, don't you think?" said an old voice from behind. An older woman came closer and said she was Margaret Whitmore, the great-granddaughter of the mansion's first owners. Her family had kept the property for many generations, gathering different items and keepsakes over the years. "Do you know anything about the people in this photograph?" Sarah asked, her professional interest now fully awake. Margaret shook her head slowly. She said that this particular picture had come with several other family items over the funds. From what little family stories remained, the portrait had belonged to a family named Patterson, one of the few successful black families in Boston during that time. Beyond that one detail, nothing else about their story had lasted through the years. Sarah turned her attention back to the image again. That unusual position of the mother's hand kept bothering her instincts, creating a strong pull that she simply could not ignore. Something told her there was much more to this photograph than what could be seen. Back at her office in downtown Portland, Sarah placed the old photograph under her professional magnifying tools. Years spent examining historical objects had taught her a valuable lesson. The most amazing discoveries often hide in the smallest details, those tiny things that most people just miss or do not see as important. As she carefully changed the focus and light on her special equipment, the image started showing its secrets with surprising clearness. The father's mustache was neatly waxed and combed, following the men's fashion rules of that time. The children's clothes looked clean and perfect, ironed without any wrinkles or marks. Every part of the photograph showed the careful work and attention that marked formal portrait sessions of the early 20th century. What struck Sarah most deeply, however, was what this picture meant in history. Here was a black family in 1914, a time when African Americans faced huge problems and unfair, treatment across the United States, sitting for an costly portrait at one of Boston's finest studios. The Pattersons had clearly overcome barriers that seemed impossible for most people of color during that period. But it was the mother's hand that held Sarah's full attention. Between the woman's nicely curved fingers, barely noticeable in the original view, appeared the edge of something white. The object looked like paper, a small folded piece, carefully hidden, yet not fully out of the camera's view. The careful way her fingers bent suggested she was holding it on purpose, perhaps hoping it would not be noticed in the formal portrait, while still keeping whatever it meant. Sarah felt her heart beat faster as the ideas started forming in her mind. Throughout her 15-year career studying historical artifacts, she had learned that people often hid important things in plain sight, especially during times of social trouble, personal problems, or when facing situations out of their control. The year 1914 held special meaning in American and world history. It marked the start of the Great War in Europe, a time when families across America faced great uncertainty and hard choices about their futures. For a black family with clear wealth and status, the pressures and risks of that time would have been much greater. They lived in a society that often saw their success with doubt or open dislike. Whatever Eleanor Patterson had hidden in her hand that day must have been very important. Sarah took pictures of the detail with her high-resolution camera and moved the image to her computer for digital improvement. The white object became a bit clearer on her screen, looking like folded paper of some sort, though its real contents stayed mysteriously unknown. She picked up her phone and called her longtime colleague, Dr. James Reed, a historian who focused on early 20th century African American social history with the University of Southern Maine. His knowledge in recording the lives and challenges of black families during this period made him the right person to ask. "James, I've found something that I think will really interest you," she said, unable to hide the excitement in her voice. "It's a family portrait from 1914, showing a successful black family in Boston. But there's something the mother is hiding in her hand, something she clearly did not want others to see, yet something she could not let go of completely. Given the historical background and what black families faced during that period, this could be truly important. Send me those images right away," James replied without delay. His own interest was clearly raised. 1914 was a very key year, especially for African American communities. Black families were handling everything from money problems to the risk of racial violence to the coming war overseas. Whatever this woman was hiding might tell us a remarkable story about survival and strength during one of America's hardest times. Dr. James Reed studied the high-resolution images Sarah had sent to him with the careful look of someone who had given his whole career to revealing hidden black history. His historian's thinking quickly saw the possible meaning of the hidden object. Formal studio portraits in 1914 were carefully arranged events where every single part was controlled and placed. Absolutely nothing appeared by chance or accident. The Hartwell Studios mark gives us our first real clue, James explained to Sarah during their meeting at the University African American Studies Department. Theodore Hartwell ran one of Boston's most exclusive photography businesses from 1895 until 1925. What makes this especially interesting is that Hartwell was known as one of the few high-end photographers who would take black clients, for an extra fee, of course. His client records, if they still exist somewhere, might help us identify this family and understand their place in Boston's black elite. James had spent the whole morning calling different historical groups and archives around the Boston area. His contacts at the Massachusetts Historical Society confirmed they had received Hartwell's full business records back in 1967, including detailed appointment books, financial records, and client letters. "I'm driving to Boston first thing tomorrow morning," Sarah said with strong purpose. "This mystery is not going to solve itself, and I have a feeling we are close to finding something important." The next morning found Sarah sitting in the climate-controlled archives of the Massachusetts Historical Society. The Hartwell Studios collection filled 3 large archival boxes holding appointment, ledgers, client letters, and even some original photographic glass plates carefully kept over the decades. She started her search with the 1914 appointment book, carefully looking through months of handwritten notes. The system Hartwell used was exact and full, recording not only appointments, but also payment amounts and special notes about each session. Under the date, March 15, 1914, Sarah found exactly what she had been looking for. Patterson Family Portrait 2 o'clock p.m. Payment received $75 premium, sitting special accommodation. The entry included a home address, 145 Beacon Street, Boston. Sarah's breath stopped for a moment when she read that address. Beacon Street was one of the most important addresses in all of Boston, home to rich business leaders, well-known merchants, and old wealthy families. For a black family to live there in 1914 showed an almost unbelievable level of success and social position. The premium sitting note suggested the Pattersons could pay for Hartwell's most costly services, while special accommodation probably meant the extra arrangements made for photographing black clients at a place that mainly served white customers. Sarah's hands shook a little as she took a photo of the entry with her phone. The next step in her search would involve studying the Patterson family's history at that remarkable address. But already she felt she was close to finding something truly special. A story of black success, hidden secrets, and perhaps sadness that had stayed buried for over 100 years. A librarian came to the research table with a curious look. "Finding what you're looking for?" "I believe so," Sarah answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now I need to discover who the Pattersons really were, how a black family reached such success during such a hard time, and what a mother felt she had to hide in her hand during what should have been a happy celebration of her family's achievements." The weight of the mystery pressed on her as she got ready to look deeper into the Patterson family history, a story that promised to show both victory and hardship from one of America's most difficult periods. The Boston Public Library's genealogy department became Sarah's next stop in her search for answers. With the address from Hartwell's appointment records, she started the careful work of putting together the Patterson family story through city directories, census records, newspaper files, and other historical papers that had lasted more than a century. The 1910 federal census showed the family's makeup in clear detail. Thomas Patterson, age 42, was listed as a textile merchant, an impressive job for any man during that time, but especially meaningful for an African American. His wife Eleanor, aged 36, was recorded as keeping the household. Their son William had just turned 4 years old at the time of that census, while their daughter, Catherine, was listed as only 1 year old. The census also showed that the family had 2 household servants, a clear sign of real wealth during Boston's busy textile industry time. Further study showed that Thomas Patterson owned and ran Patterson and Associates, a very successful textile importing business with ties to mills and makers throughout New England and beyond. The company focused on fine fabrics brought from European makers, a trade that needed wide international connections, smart business skills, and the ability to handle complex import rules. What made Thomas Patterson's success even more amazing was the historical setting. In 1914, the great majority of black Americans lived in the South under harsh Jim Crow rules, working as sharecroppers or in other low-pay jobs. Those who had moved north faced unfair treatment in housing, work, and almost every part of daily life. For Thomas Patterson to have built a successful international trading business and set his family on prestigious Beacon Street showed a victory against nearly impossible difficulties. Sarah found that the Pattersons were part of Boston's small but important black elite, a group of educated, wealthy African Americans who had made spaces of success, despite the widespread racism of their time. These families often knew each other, married within the group, and worked together to support their community while dealing with the risky conditions of early 20th century American society. But as Sarah looked deeper into the newspaper files from 1914, she started finding worrying details that put a shadow over the Patterson family's families. Remarkable success story. The Boston Globe from February 1914 had a small notice hidden in the business section. Patterson and Associates faces problems amid changing European trade conditions. The article mentioned worries about the company's import papers and suggested federal officials had started asking questions. Far more concerning was an item Sarah found in the Boston Herald, dated March 10, 1914, exactly 5 days before the family sat for their portrait at Hartwell Studios. The headline read, "Local textile merchant Thomas Patterson questioned by federal investigators regarding suspected problems in import documentation." Sarah felt a cold feeling down her back as the pieces started to fit together. The Patterson family had ordered their expensive portrait at Boston's most exclusive studio, while Thomas was under active federal investigation. Given the racial situation of that time, Sarah understood right away how dangerous their position must have been. A black man accused of federal crimes in 1914 faced not only legal trouble, but possibly his very life. This background gave new meaning to whatever Eleanor Patterson had hidden in her hand that March afternoon. What had she hidden during what might have been their last family portrait as a successful Boston family? And why had she felt she had to keep it in such an unusual way? The reference librarian saw Sarah's strong focus on the papers spread before her and came to the table. "Are you researching the Patterson textile case?" she asked in a quiet voice. Sarah looked up, really surprised. "You're familiar with it? It's quite an interesting case study, actually. One of the few involving a prominent black businessman during that period. Thomas Patterson was found guilty of customs fraud in 1915. The family lost everything. Their beautiful home, the business Thomas had built over decades, their hard-earned social position in Boston society." The librarian paused in a dramatic way before continuing. "Eleanor Patterson disappeared shortly after the trial ended. Some historical reports suggest she fled to Canada with her children to escape the scandal and protect them from the results. Others believe something far more sad happened. The truth is, no one really knows what happened to her." Sarah felt an almost electric feeling moving through her body. Whatever Eleanor Patterson had hidden in her hand during that March 1914 portrait suddenly seemed much more important than a simple family keepsake. It might hold the key to understanding what really happened to this remarkable family, and perhaps even show a hidden truth that had stayed buried for more than a century.